Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today, my dear friends and subscribers and visitors to my channel, I would like to talk about Donald Trump and specifically about the epic fury. And it seems like the title that comes to mind more and more to me is From Epic Fury to Epic Fail. Now, of course, as the title suggests, I'm among those uh, in the alternative media who believe that there is a kind of a consensus forming that what is going on is an epic fail of President Trump. And that is connected mostly, but not only, to the situation in the Middle East and specifically the war on Iran. But I'd like to talk not about the war as such, but to put it as I like to do in a kind of a broader historical perspective to try to see where it all started, what were the goals, and where it went wrong, if it went wrong at all. Maybe this is what was supposed to happen in the first place. So let me take this kind of a historical rule, historical view of what is happening, a kind of a history of the epic fury. So we start with the obvious, and that is what were the goals of Donald Trump? And in the most broad sense, it was to make America great again. But the heart of the matter is what was actually understood by this. And it seems to me that the movement of Make America Great Again actually was quite different from what Donald Trump meant by this. And there was a kind of a divergence between the two. The people who voted for Donald Trump uh, thought that he meant that making America great meant building factories in America, stopping globalization, stopping woke culture, getting back to traditional values, limiting immigration that took American jobs from Americans, and primarily the gist of it was focusing on domestic agenda. As Vance put it at the time that he was a candidate, not to defend foreign borders, but to focus on what's inside our borders. But this is actually not what Donald Trump meant. And as time went on, more and more become clear what he meant. And what he meant was to establish American supremacy, hegemony over the rest of the world. And he didn't announce it as clearly as it is seen now, but that is what he wanted. And that is why he started talking about Greenland, because Greenland has all these resources that we need. And that in itself was something that was quite interesting to analyze. Why is it that any country has a right to take something that belonged to somebody else just because they need it? Isn't that called violation of sovereign rights? Isn't that called aggression if it actually happens? But it went smoothly. Nobody really worried about it. Nobody talked about it. He talked about getting Greenland, then the talk finished, but the Europeans said no, and it stopped at that. The next interesting moment was in that agenda when Trump was talking about imposing tariffs and sanctions on countries that sell oil that America didn't approve of. And specifically, this was about Iran, this was about Russia, this was about India. This was that the United States under Trump usurped its right to dictate to other sovereign countries what they could sell to others and didn't have to ask American permission to it for it. So this was another very clear indication that the claim of Mr. Trump was to control world trade. And that again went through, and nobody thought, well, it's okay to control trade of Iran oil to China. and Russian selling of oil to India. It didn't seem anything out of the ordinary, but in terms of principle, this was already a very serious claim to world hegemony that didn't seem to bother anybody. The next came the settlement of Gaza after total devastation and flattening of entire city with so many children killed and women and homeless and all the troubles that Gazans went through. It all stopped, and it looked like Trump was a peace settler because at least the bombing stopped. But there was another interesting claim to world hegemony, and that was his Council of Peace, which was supposed to eventually replace the United Nations, and where it was Trump who was going to be a chair for life. So this is another incredibly interesting psychological example of a person who thinks that he could be the ruler of the world with this kind of a council of peace where the rich countries pay $1 billion just to participate and to listen to Trump's speeches and approve automatically his agenda. And again, it worked and nobody seemed to say anything. Then comes Venezuela. And Venezuela was also an example. Oh, we did it. We just, success, success, win, win, win. And nobody seemed to bother. Well, the United States asserted its right over a sovereign nation to take under its control somebody else's property. In other words, Venezuelan property, we need it, we take it. And one can go on also about Panama, how we need it, we're going to take it. So Trump many, many times asserted this principle. We need it, we take it. And the most dramatic example of that, of course, was Iran, where it ran into trouble. Now, we all follow events of Iran day on the day basis, and of course, there's nothing much I can add to it except that what was supposed to happen is that Iran was supposed to collapse after the murder of its leaders. This was like Israeli contribution to international relations. You kill all the leaders, you blow them up through their phones as they did in Lebanon. And then they thought the people would rise and the color revolution happens. And this was already Trump repeated many times that what he wanted was to appoint the Ayatollah. He wants complete surrender. Now let's imagine the world as it would be if Mr. Trump succeeded. So he would have this Council of Peace that he's running the world. He controls the Venezuelan oil. He controls Iranian oil. Who is going to be next in this kind of a world Mr. Trump was building? Well, Russia was going to be next. At best, he would have allowed the Russians to take a third of Ukraine, keeping for himself and for his companies and BlackRock and others another 2/3 of Ukraine. And then he would go for something that almost happened, which is that a drone, supposedly Ukrainian, or the one with American participation, blows up Valdai residence of President Putin, and then there is a color revolution, and then the dream of the European hawks that they keep on repeating day after day, even today, even nowadays, is that Russia should be split up into 5 little statelets and that they could take control of its natural resources. Now, if that were to happen after the demolishing sovereignty of Iran, well, then Mr. Trump would be close to fulfilling his agenda. And then he would go to President Xi of China and saying, okay, now we got Iranian oil, we got Venezuelan oil, we got Russian oil, and you will do what I say. You will accept the kind of tariffs that I dictate to you if you want to sell anything in the United States. It was all a part of a grand design to ascertain to assure American hegemony in the world. That was the plan, but it failed. From epic fury to epic fail. Now, why did it fail? And this is extremely interesting. It is in mass media, it's always presented simply that the Iranians, because of their geographic position, can't control the Strait of Hormuz, and therefore it is difficult, but it is doable. As Trump himself says, oh, we need just a couple of minesweepers. No, Mr. Trump, it's not a matter of minesweepers. And the most important factor is not that they geographically control access to the Gulf of Hormuz. They do, and that's fine, and that makes it easier. But the gist of the matter is that they have the missiles, and they have hypersonic missiles, and they have the missiles that are better than the ones that the United States has, and they have more of those missiles, and those missiles are hidden in the mountains that cannot be easily blown up. And they were preparing for this onslaught so well that now their missiles keep on flying and hitting the targets in Israel and in Gulf countries allied with the United States. And Trump can only repeat, well, we destroyed everything. They have no air force, they have no fleet. And even though they have nothing, according to Trump, they keep on shooting and keep on hitting the targets in Israel and in the Gulf states. So it seems to me that one has to make some conclusions. Number one, United States weapons are too expensive and they cannot compete with cheap drones or even with the weapons that Iranians have and that the Russians have, the hypersonic missiles, and that the Chinese have, the hypersonic missiles, and that these missiles are extremely effective. Now, the next point is economic, and that's the control of the Gulf of Hormuz, which is 20% of oil, which means that if you bomb Iran, the Iranians said in that case they would bomb the Gulf. And that means that there would be damage or destruction of the oil refineries, and that means the price of oil will go up instead of down. In other words, the original goals of Epic Fury would be defeated even more because not only the price would not go down, it would go up. Now, going up of the price of oil would mean that it would make energy more expensive. That means everything more expensive. That means life for Americans and others will become more expensive. And that means that his chances of losing midterm elections in November would increase. Now, there's also the epic fail is not only in that, in oil prices, it is also that the military allies of the United States, such as South Korea, Japan, and Australia, are beginning to have second thoughts about the validity of this alliance. The Gulf states now are confronted with a challenge from Iran, where it says, the only reason we destroy you, we are hitting you, is because of American bases. We have nothing against you. Get rid of American bases and we will go to business as usual. In other words, there's an incentive now for countries not to seek American military alliance because it only brings trouble. Moreover, when Spain refused to participate in attack on Iran, the United States said, well, we will use your bases anyway. And when Spain said, we forbid you to use our bases, the United States said, oh, we're going to use it anyway. We're not going to ask you any permission. So this was another assertion of American power and disregard to treaties, obligations, sovereign rights of Spain or Italy, of its territory, And that, of course, means that many more countries would say, wait, maybe we don't need that kind of alliance where the ally treats us not as an equal partner, but as a country to whom they can dictate what they want to do. Now, the next thing that Trump did, which was totally of his own doing, is a quarrel with NATO. He asks them to participate, they refuse, and then he begins to insult them that they should be grateful, that they should do this, should do that, and then the result, of course, is many countries would think, well. Why is he talking to us like this? In fact, it was in the British Parliament that for the first time I heard speeches of a certain, I don't want to name him, who said that Donald Trump is talking as a gangster. Never before in the British Parliament was there a reference to an American president as a gangster. So that means that all the assets that he had, that President Trump had just a few months ago, are wasted, one after another. And the the cherry at the cake, the final moment, is that his actions have undermined significantly the petrodollar. In other words, the Iranians are saying what their goal is, that when the war is over, and when business is back to normal in the Gulf, that the Gulf states should be doing business not in dollars, in yuan, in rupee, in rubles, whatever, but not in dollars. And so they will have a choice. Either they do business not in dollars or not do any business at all. And that is how powerful Iran is in its geographic position with its missiles. Moreover, BRICS is already trading not in dollars. 90% of trade between China and Russia, or Iran and China, is not in dollars, even if it involves uh, petrol, which means oil. In other words, yeah, and the last thing is that India just sold $50 billion dollars worth of treasury bills. In other words, the China and India are beginning to dump American treasury bills, which of course is a big blow to the dollar, to the currency, and to the stability of U.S. economy. Now, all of that is what Mr. Trump accomplished with his epic fury, which is quickly turning to epic fail. Thank you very much, my dear friends, and I stop at that today. I want to remind you to please put likes if you do like it, because it helps promoting my channel. I also invite you to look at my other playlists, such as War in Ukraine, Russia under Yeltsin and Putin, Soviet history, Russian history, European history, personal narratives, and several others. And I invite you to buy my book, From Vladimir Lenin to Vladimir Putin. And again, I remind you that very soon, in a couple of months, there will be an edition in Portuguese coming out. Goodbye. See you soon.